Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. This is a man called Andrew Cuomo. Mr. Cuomo is the governor of the state of New York. New York is one of the most corrupt places in the English-speaking world. You can imagine the qualities you would need to possess in order to run a place like that. Andrew Cuomo has those qualities, and he figured he could ride them all the way to the White House. But that didn't happen. Instead, another New Yorker became president. This enraged Andrew Cuomo. He's been mad ever since.
First year of President Trump's administration, we lost 40,000 people to gun deaths, the highest number in 50 years. New York will move forward, not by building a wall, my friends, but by building new bridges. The unifier for the Democrats is their anger and fear at the Trump administration.
Like so many people who truly hate Donald Trump, Andrew Cuomo tumbled headlong into the rabbit warren of Russia conspiracy. And in his defense, it did make a kind of sense. Trump is bad and orange. Therefore, he is also a traitor who works for Putin. Cuomo made that point on Twitter. Quote, Trump is now aiding and abetting Vladimir Putin, a Russian dictator, and trying to cover up Russia's interference in our elections, end quote. Aiding and abetting, a cover-up. Call the police. The Russians are here. Andrew Cuomo appeared to believe all of this, and many people did. Imagine how those people must have felt yesterday. For more than 2 years, they waited for their prosecutor God to deliver them from their orange Babylon. When the day finally came, the joke was on them. It was all a hoax. There was no collusion. Andrew Cuomo, and a lot of people like Andrew Cuomo, suddenly looked pretty stupid. Luckily, Andrew Cuomo knows people. New York is like that. His little brother works at CNN. That's not really surprising, actually. Lots of people at CNN have close ties to the Democratic Party, including the guy who runs the place, Jeff Zucker. Zucker's often said that he may run himself for office as a Democrat. So if you want to know what Democratic Party functionaries are thinking, just flip on CNN. Well, last night, pretty much everyone on CNN seemed upset by the Mueller report. Andrew Cuomo's little brother looked especially agitated. He'd heard people criticizing CNN. He doesn't like that. It shouldn't be allowed.
I'm not going to let people say that, CNN or the media or whatever have been creating a false narrative. Yep. This report is plenty of proof that the questions that have been asked repeatedly were legit and that the answers we were getting consistently were not, especially once you get past the line of, hey, are you a felon? Once you move past that, the things they did, the meetings they had, the explanations they gave were wrong consistently.
So you got that? I'm not going to let people say CNN was wrong. I won't allow that. To which you might understandably respond, who cares what you think, pal? Just because you're the governor's little brother doesn't mean you get to tell me what to say. Buzz off. Get over yourself. Well, okay, you could say that. We're not telling you not to say that. You could ignore his orders entirely if you wanted to. It's up to you. It's your life. But before you make any hasty decisions, we thought you ought to see this.
You guys who are asking for the fitness tips, I'll give you one. The key to this is make sure that the dumbbells are going to trail next to your body like this as you go up and down. If you see me coming like that, I'm not doing the exercise right, all right?
Whoa. Okay. Now ask yourself again, do you really want to criticize CNN? Does that seem like a smart move? This is New York. When the governor's little brother suggests that you do something, it's wise to pay close attention if you know it's good for you. So repeat after me. CNN was never wrong. CNN got it right. CNN is the most trusted name in news. Good. The governor's brother likes it better when you talk that way. If only everyone was so obedient. Because let's be honest, not everybody is that obedient. Some people are still going to point out that CNN did, strictly speaking, get the biggest story of the decade completely and utterly and flamboyantly wrong. People will say that no matter how many barbells its anchors lift, because it's undeniably true. And it wasn't just CNN. Virtually the entire news media did the same thing. This was failure on an unprecedented scale. The Russia hoax wasn't simply part of what the media covered. Often it was all they covered. for years. The numbers are remarkable. Over the first 60 days of 2018, just to pick it almost at random, the evening news shows and the broadcast networks spent more than twice as much time talking about the Russia hoax as any other topic. Print, even more profound. Since the 2016 election, to give you just one measure, more than 150,000 Americans have died from drug overdose. That's far more than the number of Americans killed during the entire Second World War in the Pacific. Guadalcanal, Okinawa, Tarawa, Iwo Jima, those battles took fewer American lives than opioids did over an even shorter period. And yet somehow, the New York Times barely noticed any of this. During the same period that this number, 150,000 people were dying, the New York Times wrote more than twice as many stories about the Mueller investigation. That mattered more to them. At the Washington Post, the ratio was even starker. Last year, Jeff Bezos' newspaper ran 4,319 articles about the Russia investigation. At the same time, it ran only a little more than 1,000 that even mentioned the opioid crisis. America's shrinking middle class, that got a total of 119 mentions. They just didn't care, and they weren't pretending otherwise. They don't care. Cable news was, as you know, even worse. All Russia, all the time, for years, to the exclusion of everything else, including, obviously, the truth. Relentless, repetitive, calculatingly dishonest. The very definition of propaganda. That's what they did. And now they can't stop. They've been doing it too long. Watch them test drive their new talking point. See if you can identify which word the DNC has told them to use.
The report contains a potentially damning list of ways the president tried to, quote, influence the investigation.
Arguing that the Mueller report is far more damning.
And it's not pretty. It is an ugly, damning piece of business.
I agree with him that it's absolutely damning.
Democrats say the report is damning.
Report from the special counsel is more damning than all those reports.
Far more damning to the president than the attorney general initially indicated.
But it's still very damning. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Very damning, says Don Lemon. Absolutely, agrees the governor's little brother. And they're right. It is damning.
So can we expect the Mueller effect to impact the 2020 presidential race? Our power panel is here to debate. Former Obama campaign policy advisor Laurie Watkins, the Daily Caller editorial director Vince Colanese, and constitutional law attorney Jenna Ellis. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay, so the day after the Mueller report, lightly redacted as the DOJ described it, there has been a subpoena now to go out from the Judiciary Committee. The chair, Jerry Nadler, has talked often about the issue of impeachment. He says, we got to see what's in there so we can decide if that's where we're going. Now, DOJ says this about the subpoena today. The Department of Justice has made arrangements for Chairman Nadler and other congressional leaders to review the report with even fewer redactions. In light of this, Congressman Nadler's subpoena is premature and unnecessary. Laurie.
Yes, so a few select members of Congress will be able to view the less redacted version of this report next week. And Congressman Jerry Nadler was correct in ordering a subpoena for a fully unredacted report and version of that. But leaders in Congress need to continue to push for special counsel Mueller to come and testify before Congress, as well as an ongoing investigation that needs to remain unimpeded with President Trump and his inner circle. It was very clear in the special counsel's report that Congress can open up the question of obstruction, and it's up to Congress for further review and debate.
Okay, so Vince, a lot of these folks who are on these letters demanding answers in the unredacted report for them to see in full are attorneys. They know that the grand jury stuff is not stuff that they're going to be allowed to see without a court order. But this is what the Democrats, several of them in their letter to the DOJ said today. Your proposed accommodation, which among other things would prohibit discussion of the full report even with other committee members, is not acceptable. So Vince, they're saying thanks, but no thanks on a look at a lesser redacted report.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, the Department of Justice would be right to be skeptical of Democrats if that's what the feeling was here, because we've seen plenty of leaks come out of Congress when the materials are actually sent over to Congress. We know that Attorney General Bill Barr has meticulously been as forthcoming as he possibly can be with both Congress and the American public, and we should be realistic about what the Democratic intent here is. This is an effort to keep a scandal alive that was pushed on the American public for 2 years. There's some dramatic goalpost shifting going on. The original allegation was and continued to be that collusion took place. That well has completely dried up. And as a result of it, now you have desperate Democratic members of Congress looking for another partisan out to make this harmful for the president.
All right, Jenna, I want to give you a quick final word on this because I want to make sure we get to our second topic.
Yeah, and so Democrats are looking for impeachment. It's nothing more than a political move here, and it's not going to help them in 2020. The Democrats are the party of feelings-based truth rather than objective truth that's grounded in fact and reality. The fact and reality is that the legal questions are closed, and they just want to have President Trump be guilty because they feel like it. Remember, the progressive left is the party that feelings-based, you can wake up and be a different gender based on what you feel. They ignore the fact and reality that a human being in the womb is made in the image of God. They ignore the fact that pre-political rights come from God, our Creator. And so as they continue to ignore fact and reality, this is not going to go well for them in 2020 because they're ignoring the rule of law. They're ignoring all of the facts of the situation based simply on their hatred for Donald Trump.
Well, and someone who wants to come out on top in 2020, we understand that the former vice president, by a number of sources, says that he's going to announce he's in the race next week. But something we can't confirm is that he may potentially make his announcement in Charlottesville, which obviously was a tragic place where, race relations flared. There were massive problems. A woman lost her life there. It's a very controversial spot. But tonight there are a number of people asking questions about Biden's record on race, and this may be why he, if he goes there, is going there. In a piece in the New York Times, The Trouble with Biden, the author says this, that Biden has given liberal cover to whites and white backlash in the past. He says, he wasn't an accidental opponent of busing. He was a leader who helped derail integration. He didn't just vote for punitive legislation on crime and drugs. He wrote it. I want to have you all weigh in quickly on that. Lori, we'll start with you. I mean, also comments he's made about reparations that really do not seem to fit with where the party is in 2019.
Look, I understand this issue is brought up every time that Vice President Biden has decided to run for either re-election or for president. It is an issue that is important. I'm not going to discredit that, but it's also an issue that has been brought up every time, and it's over 40 years old. Vice President Biden, hoped that busing would bring equal opportunity, but it didn't, and that wasn't so, and that's not what happened. I think Vice President Biden has overwhelming support from the civil rights activists and community within America, and he has proven himself time and time again.
Vince, he called the idea of busing asinine. He had his objections to it, but again, the crime bill seems to be the one that really gets him the most backlash from the left. I'll have you quickly comment, and then Jenna.
Yeah, each of his campaigns, this has been brought up, but you know what? The Democratic Party has never had less tolerance for explanations about this than they do right now. They will use this against him. This will be a bloody primary, and these topics will come up. Busing, being opposed to that, that's coming up. His support for the crime bill, that's coming up. His treatment of Anita Hill during the 90s, that's all going to come up, and it will be used as a cudgel against him. This is a party he helped build, but it's one that he doesn't recognize, and identity politics is going to hurt Joe Biden in a way that he's not expecting.
Jenna?
Yeah, and I would agree with Vince that basically Joe Biden's campaign is going to be an apology tour for identity politics. He's basically disclaiming himself as the old white male, and he's saying that he is ageist, racist, and sexist, and we can see that throughout the course of his political history. And so he's just continuing to apologize, and I think that with the 2019 and going into 2020, the Democrats aren't going to embrace him, and I think that he's not going to be a candidate that will stand up well against Donald Trump, certainly because we can see that Donald Trump has really brought policy as the forefront of the issue, not identity politics.
Well, it's the most diverse field in Democratic primary history, so we will see as the top folks polling at the top, Bernie, Biden, and Beto, and now Buttigieg. It's all the beast. All right, thank you all for being with us on our Power Panel tonight. Great to have you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.